Today, there are approximately 2.4 billion Christians around the world, making up about 30% of the global population. However, Christianity wasn't always this widespread. In the first century AD, the number of people gathered around Jesus numbered only a few hundred. Even when Jesus was crucified, or as Christians believe, ascended into heaven, this didn't change much. Considering they faced a powerful empire like Rome, it didn't seem likely that this new belief would spread. In its early years, Christianity didn't even emerge as a new religion. Jesus and his earliest followers were Jewish, and they identified as such. So how did Christianity spread from Judea, a Roman province, to all corners of the empire, and become the dominant religion within just 350 years? When did Christianity separate from Judaism, and when did it start to be recognized as its own religion? That's what we'll be exploring today. To start, we need to go back to the early 1st century AD, when Jesus of Nazareth was traveling through the land of Palestine, sharing his teachings. His teachings weren't about creating a new religion, but were deeply rooted in Jewish beliefs. In the Jewish sacred texts, it was foretold that God would restore Israel to its former glory before the end of time. The Jewish people called this the kingdom of God, and the herald of this kingdom would be the Messiah, a descendant of King David. Jesus' teachings were closely connected to this belief. He was seen as the Messiah sent to proclaim the coming of God's kingdom, and his purpose was to prepare people for this approaching kingdom. According to his teachings, after one final battle, the nations would be defeated and God would restore heaven on earth for the righteous. The wicked, however, would be condemned to a place called Gehenna, what we would call hell today. At this point, there was no such thing as Christianity as we know it. Even in the following years, the earliest Christians were not separate from Judaism. Early Christians were considered just another group of Jews living within the Roman Empire. But over time, this began to change. The period following Jesus' death is known as the Apostolic Age, or as it's described in the New Testament, the Acts of the Apostles. This period traditionally begins with Jesus' resurrection, which according to Christian belief took place 3 days after his crucifixion. After rising from the dead, Jesus gave his apostles the task of spreading his teachings throughout the world. In Christianity, this event is called the Great Commission, and it was the moment the apostles began to rapidly spread the faith. Early Christians gathered in small private homes to practice their faith in secret. These homes are considered the first churches in Christian history. In addition, any Christian community in a city or town was also referred to as a church. The word church comes from the Greek word ekklesia, meaning gathering, assembly, or community. The first Christian church and community were established in Jerusalem, as the apostles remained there and continued their work after Jesus' ascension. In the beginning, the apostles preached only to Jews. However, Jews made up only about 7% of the population within the Roman Empire. The remaining 93% were non-Jews, or Gentiles as they were called. Over time, missionary work expanded to include the Gentiles, influenced in part by the Apostle Paul, whom we'll talk about shortly. This expansion aligned with the mission Jesus gave to his apostles, as he asked them to spread his teachings to all people. There was another reason why Gentiles were more receptive to Jesus' teachings. Judaism was largely closed to outsiders. Gentiles, even if they wanted to, couldn't easily convert to Judaism. Despite this, there were strong social and commercial ties between Jews and non-Jews. Many Gentiles participated in Jewish synagogue events and festivals out of respect for the Jewish God, while continuing to follow their local beliefs. These individuals were the first Gentile group exposed to Jesus' teachings, and many were ready to embrace them. Because of this growing interest, in 49 AD, a secret meeting was held in Jerusalem. This meeting included Paul and James, the brother of Jesus. At that time, there was no separate Christian doctrine, so followers of Jesus still adhered to traditional Jewish customs. For example, practices like circumcision, dietary restrictions, and observing the Sabbath were integral to Jewish identity. However, the question arose, should Gentiles be required to follow these customs? During this meeting in 49 AD, it was decided that Gentile converts were not obligated to follow these practices. Instead, they were asked to avoid sexual immorality and refrain from consuming food from strangled animals. This decision led to the emergence of a third group, Jewish Christians, Gentile Christians, and traditional Jews. It took centuries for these groups to fully separate and for Christianity to become distinct from Judaism. The separation became even more pronounced after 132 AD, when the Jewish people revolted against Rome, and Christians chose not to support the uprising. A pivotal figure in this story is Saul, a devout Jew who was born around 10 AD in the city of Tarsus, within the Roman Empire. Saul, who would later become known as Paul, was a Pharisee deeply committed to his Jewish faith, and he saw Jesus' teachings as a heresy that needed to be punished. He traveled from town to town, identifying Christians and handing them over to be punished or executed. But everything changed for Saul on the road to Damascus. According to his own accounts, a blinding light surrounded him, and he heard the voice of Jesus asking why he was persecuting him. Saul was struck blind for 3 days, and after being healed by a Christian priest, he became a follower of Jesus. From that moment on, Saul, now known as Paul, dedicated his life to spreading the teachings of Jesus, even enduring imprisonment and flogging in the process. Paul's influence was profound. He came from a diverse background. He was a Roman citizen, a Greek by birth, and a Jew by heritage. This allowed him to connect with both Jews and non-Jews in ways others couldn't. One of Paul's most significant contributions was his letters to various cities in the Roman Empire, many of which are included in the New Testament. These letters helped spread Jesus' teachings far beyond the rural areas where Jesus had preached. Paul brought these teachings to major cities like Rome, Corinth, Thessalonica, and Ephesus. Through the efforts of Paul and other apostles, Jesus' message spread throughout the Roman Empire. How the teachings reached Alexandria remains uncertain, though Christian tradition holds that Mark the Evangelist brought them there. Regardless, by 50 AD, Christianity was spreading rapidly in the region. Thanks to the apostles and early believers, Christianity has grown into the world's most widespread religion. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications.